Hi, I'm Angelique and welcome to our continuing series on QCT6. In a previous video, showed you on QCT6 Pro how to get started in Pattern CAD. And in this video, I'm going to go into some of the other features of QCT6 Pro, which include the record feature and the QuiltCAD. But I'm also going to show you some of the stitching, including some designs that I created in Pattern CAD. We're going to get started in simulation mode, so you are welcome to follow along with us on your tablet or computer so you can kind of learn these features, and I'm going to just kind of show you what it looks like on the tablet versus when you're actually stitching some of these designs out as well. All right, so first thing I want to do is just turn on my Quilter's Creative Touch 6 software, and it's going to come up and it's going to ask me because it knows that it's currently not hooked up to the machine. So I'm just going to say yes, that I want to go into simulation mode, or continue if you'd been working in simulation mode at another time. And this is just going to load up the software and kind of allow me access to the different things. And you want to make sure that you are in Pro. So you can see up here that I am in Pro. If not, you would just click on the product tiers and select your Pro. So that's going to get rid of the gold stuff because we won't be using any of the gold features today. We're going to start with record. So over here are the other features that are available in QCT6 Pro. And we're going to start here with record. And it's going to ask you to set your safe area. It's for simulation, so whatever numbers are there, just go with it. It doesn't really matter at this point. So I'm going to hit OK. And I can put in if I know the size of the quilt I'm working on, but again, it's really not important. Let's take a look at some of the things that are available here. You can see that you can exit out the program with the red X, and you'll see that on the majority of our screens. And you're going to see we have a save button. So if I, kind of like what I'm working on, I can click save exactly what I have. And then in simulation mode, I have this little two half-colored arrow, black on one side, white on the other side. This is basically the placement of where the simulated needle would be if I was kind of drawing this out. We have a back button, which is going to take you to the prior screen. We do have a toolbox, which includes setting your safe area, doing some measurements, all of that. But again, we're not really doing any measurements, so I'm just going to kind of go back. We have a clear. Clear is basically going to erase everything that you just drew or traced using your machine when you're in the record feature. And then I'll show you edit once we kind of get to having something here, but just briefly, that is going to take you over to the Pattern CAD, which I showed you in the other video. If I'm ready to start recording, there's two places I can do that. There's the big green button and the little button here. I like the big button. And so I'm going to click the start recording. And then wherever I click my mouse when I'm drawing, that's where it's going to start. So I can just kind of draw whatever design. I'm just doing a really simple loop-to-loop here just to give you kind of an idea. And then when I'm happy with it or I'm done drawing, I'm going to click the big red stop sign, and that's going to stop my recording. If I really just don't like it at all, I can hit clear and it's going to completely go away. So I'm just going to do another one real quickly just to have something here to show you. Maybe I'm going to cursive the word love, and that's going to be my design. Okay, so let's say I do like this. If I wanted to stitch it exactly the way it is, I would click the So Recorded when I'm actually hooked up to the machine. But most of the time, I'm drawing with a mouse, not a stylus. I'm a little shaky when I do that, so I'm probably going to want to do some editing first before I click on that design. So I would hit Edit. It's going to prompt me, am I sure that I want to end this session? And let's say, you know what, I don't, because I want to add a little something else to that. I can record some more. So I can start anywhere. I could start here if I wanted to. Maybe I decided I wanted to add a little heart as well. And then maybe I take my little heart back over to here, all right? So you can do several different recordings, but again, once you're done, either save it or go into your edit screen. And so this time I'm like, yeah, I think I'm pleased with what I've drawn so far, and it's gonna take me to QuiltCAD, where you can use all the different tools to smooth things out, get it optimized and all that for placing it like a pattern, right? So since we showed you already how to use QuiltCAD, I'm not going to kind of show you in this screen, but what I am going to do now is I'm going to show you what it's like if you were connected to your automation. So one of the things that you want to do before you connect from when you're in simulation mode to automation is go ahead and close out that program. All right, and so this is my cord that is going to hook up the mechanical parts of my automation to my tablet so my tablet can control the machine. Right, so now that that's hooked up, I'm ready to reopen my QCT program. Now I can, even when I'm hooked up, go back to simulation mode if I was already in simulation mode, but this time I actually want to physically move my machine, so I'm going to say no. And it's going to prompt me with make sure the sewing machine needle is up, because it's going to move it a little bit and you don't want that needle to drag on anything and end up breaking. And it is. Nothing's in the way, so I'm just going to go ahead and hit OK and let it do its little power up and checks as the software loads. Right, so I'm going to go back to the record feature and I'm going to show you what it's like, because this time we're actually going to set the safe area. So move your machine all the way top and left and click that button that says top left, and then slide your machine all the way to the right and to the bottom. Even off your quilt is perfect for that. And that's going to now let the machine know I can't go on either side outside of this zone, right? Everything else is still the same. I would get my needle this time, because you'll notice that since we're not in simulation mode, the little arrow is gone. So that, like I said, represented your needle. So now I'm just going to place the needle where I want it, and I'm going to click Start Record, and now I'm going to move the machine like I'm doing free motion to get a shape that I want. Now you do have to have your belts connected for it to be able to read that. So you might find it a little bit more difficult to push than if you were doing free motion, but you should still be able to kind of move that. You can hit stop. Just like I showed you with the simulation, I can edit, or I could go to sew recorded. So I'm gonna click sew recorded, but I'm not gonna go through actually sewing it, because I don't really want this pattern. I just wanted to demonstrate that. Once I say I want to sew it, it's gonna prompt me to save it as is, and then I can basically place this in here. Now be sure that you use the keyboard that is in the software itself, not the one that comes on your tablet. And so that's now going to save it, and it's going to take me into pattern placement. And then in pattern placement, I would then do everything I would normally do for placing a pattern and sewing it. Okay, so that's basically the record feature. One of the things that I like about the record feature is that I can take a ruler and I can measure a certain area that I have with that ruler, kind of do some pretend ruler work, and then take that into QuiltCAD, because now I have like whatever this shape is, and then I can draw something in QuiltCAD that I want to fit into that shape. I rarely will sew directly from the record feature, but it's sometimes just fun to play if you have really kind of funky blocks, different shapes. I used it when I had a Halloween quilt because there were all kinds of funky shapes for the witch's hat and things like that, that I wanted to kind of trace that shape so I could figure out what I wanted to put on the inside of it. So it's a very useful tool that you can use to expand your creativity. All right, so the next thing that I want to show you is QuiltCAD. QuiltCAD is really kind of fun and neat to work in because it really gives you an opportunity to try different quilting patterns before putting on your quilt and getting that overall feel and big picture of what it's going to look like. And sometimes it's like I have like one idea I think I want to do, and if I'm free motioning, I'll kind of start it and then be like, you know what, I really don't like this, and now I have to unpick it. QuiltCAD lets me kind of pre-stitch, if you will, so I can see, okay, this is what it would look like, and then I can kind of superimpose that on the actual quilt that I have here. So it really gives you that option to plan all of your quilting in advance and see that big picture and that overall feel of what it is we want to do before you do a single stitch. So let's go back to our tablet, which is still connected to our automation. And it has still the dimensions in here from when we set our safe area. But one of the things that I like about this is if I am in simulation mode and my blocks are supposed to be 6 by 6, I can go in to the size tool here and I can say what that block height is, right? So I can hit 6 and 6 and hit OK, and I get that sizing in there. So that gives you that. You can also set the total quilt size, so if you know what your final size is. I didn't measure mine, so I don't know off the top of my head. I can also indicate the number of blocks that are available as well. So across here I have the equivalent of 8 blocks on some of those rows, so I can do that. For the down, I'm just gonna leave it at 5. I actually have 10, so I could set that, but I'm really just gonna focus on the top half of my quilt for right now. Some of the other tools in sizing have to do with your patterns, and I'll go over that once we actually start placing some things, but I wanted to share that with you real quickly. Another thing that I like, and I'm gonna go ahead and do this one, and then I'll go over all of these other buttons that are here, is that you also have the measurement feature like you do in some of the other parts of the program. And so what you can do with that is, because I don't know about you, but my stuff never comes out exactly the final size. It's 6 by 6-ish. So I can pick a block and I can line up my needle to the edge of that block and click that left button and then take it to the bottom and line that up and click that right button and apply this measurement. And what it does when I go to size is it shows me what the actual block height is. And I could do a couple of different blocks and then take an average of that and then put that average in there if I wanted to. But I'm just gonna stick with that because I'm pretty comfortable with, even if one's a little bit larger, it's only gonna be small fractions difference and it's gonna come out fine. So I can hit OK, and now I actually have an idea of what each block size is. All right, so let's take a look at some of the things that are available here at the top. You have your typical file, edit, select, view stuff. I'm not gonna kind of go over those, but I am gonna go over these buttons that you have here. So if you already have kind of created a quilt while you were in simulation mode, you can open that here. I do have one that I was playing with for this quilt, and that's gonna bring up all the work that I have done before. If I want to get rid of my entire design, I'm skipping a little bit, I'm going to go to this X, and that's going to erase everything that I have there. If I only want to get rid of, like, say, a couple of things, I would highlight on those. So as you see, as I click on different block squares that are represented in this grid, they will highlight blue. And so whatever tools that I'm doing, that is what it's going to focus on. And so this is the block X. So that is going to specifically delete those tools. Again, I'm going to get rid of everything. It's specifically going to get rid of what I put in those blocks. Get rid of everything. Here I have an undo tool. So if I'm like, I want to go back and redo what I changed my mind, I did want it that way, or I made a mistake. I do that all the time because I forget to unhighlight things, then that lets me do that. Or if I'm like, no, I really did mean to do that, then you have your redo tool. So your left arrow undo, right arrow redo. Reset's going to reset everything back to factory settings. I'm going to skip doing that for now. Your plus button here is going to allow you to zoom in at a particular block. So select that block and zoom in, and now you can take a look at that specific placed pattern. Clicking it again returns you to the screen. I can copy a block, so I can hit this where you see the duplicated page and copy that, puts it on the clipboard, and if I want to paste it, I can then paste it. Okay. So that allows me to do that. You can also print your designs if you have a printer hooked up to that. Since we don't, we're going to skip that. Already showed you that you do have the availability of that measuring tool, and you can go straight into Pattern CAD for one of these as well. So if I wanted to edit this block here, this particular pattern, add a little something to it, take a little something away from it, I can click on it and go directly to Pattern CAD. With that one, it's going to load it in there, and then again, all those features I showed you in the previous video, you can use to adjust that pattern the way that you would like. All right, so I'm going to clear everything out because now I want to look at these right-handed column things as well. And so you have your layout. Layout allows you to select a pattern and place that pattern, which I'll show you in a minute. You can also size. Once you have a pattern placed, you can size that pattern, you can move things. The step is how much movement or increments of the sizing that you want to do. You can size things for at the maximum size of the block, and then these ones here in the middle allow you to make slight changes depending on the steps that you have available. All right, you have the select tool as well. You can select certain things, you can rotate them, you can flip them. We'll play a little bit with that in a minute, and I'll talk about this merge here momentarily, because this is very useful when you have different size blocks like I do on this quilt here. A couple other things that you might find useful is this is a, so let's say I've got a few things selected and I want to select everything or unselect everything. I can use this left top button here to do that. There's also kind of a speed one here, which is going to do a checkerboard or a chessboard for you and highlight every other block. And you can alternate by just clicking that which ones those are. The bottom right one is going to give us that full highlight, so you can kind of, again, go back and forth between those two. And then the top right one is going to be kind of a border of blocks that you might have, and select specifically those, and you can kind of alternate with this button between those two particular things. So it's really just kind of very quick ways that you can select things if you want to be able to copy or place the same pattern over and over again. At the top here and at the right, you also have buttons, and those are highlighting, in this case, whatever column I click, it's going to highlight that entire column. And I can do the same thing with the rows. So that's what those buttons are. Again, quick highlighting and unhighlighting features that are available. All right, so let's talk about the merge, because before I want to start placing my patterns, I want to have what my quilt is. And so my quilt has sporadically through it these very large blocks, which are 12 by 12-ish, and they're bordered with some 6 by 6 blocks, and they're not always in the same place. So I can use this merge feature to pull 4 of these blocks together to make that 12 by 12. And to do that, you would click and drag to create that pink square that you see. That's going to highlight everything, and then you click merge. If you say you think it's these 4 and you click them individually, that merge doesn't work that way. You have to do the drag and click the merge for it too. So I have one here. And make sure you remember to unclick whatever you've highlighted. I'm really bad about that I have to redo my work. I have another one right here, so I can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's between my 4 and my 5 block where I have another one of that on row 2. So I can merge that. And then I have another one that starts here on 3. So 1, 2, 3, and it's right on the end. So I can merge that. All right, so now I have those differences in the blocks you can do. If you have like longer ones, whatever, it just kind of allows you that flexibility. In our tools section, because not always your blocks aren't always block shaped, we do have the ability to add triangle blocks or do diagonals. So let's say this one is split by 2. I can set it like this. As you can see what I've highlighted here, and it's going to give me those 2 triangles. Maybe I only have one triangle and something else, so the check boxes here allow you to specify if I want all of them. I can do diagonals in other ways, right? So you can see this one's more horizontal. Again, same thing. The check boxes will indicate if you want both or just one. I could do a crisscross, and so I would get the 4 triangles, or maybe you've got one where you've got something big open here and so on. So it just gives you some options for those particular shapes. Some of the other tools that are here is you could repeat the pattern. So if I select a pattern, and I have it once, I can just repeat it, and I can tell it how many times I want to repeat that. So let's go to layout and just select a generic pattern for this purpose. I have it highlighted, I place that pattern. I'll go into more details here in a minute with that as we actually set this up. And then I can tell it how many times I want to repeat that pattern in that particular block. Right? So you don't always have to just have the one pattern placed. You can do it specifically in those blocks. And then so say I have the 2 here, I have choices of how I want that. So if I want it nested, which is what I had, or if I want it separated, which is what I have here, I can center it again so I get that overlap. It's already set to edge, but I have what edges that I want to kind of play with. So I can tell it if I want to do it by the ends. I mean, there's just a lot of options on how you might want to put things in if you want to repeat the same pattern within a block. It's not really what I want to do with my particular project, but I did want to share that with you. Another thing is the row rippling. So again, I'm going to just quickly select a different pattern just to give you an idea of how this works. And let's say I want to put this pattern all the way across here, and I place that pattern. I'm going to go ahead and max that size so that it's touching. And when I go into tools, I have this all highlighted, I can change or ripple the way that this pattern is going. Because right now it's straight. So, and that's what we call our normal. So it's just straight across. But if I want to do more of a zigzag, this is going to give me that. And this is my top. So I can be specific. I only want it to zig on the top, or I only want it to zig on the bottom, or I want it to zigzag on both sides. So as it goes across, it's going to look something like that. And again, depending on the pattern, it may be a little bit more squared with a zigzag, or maybe you want it a little bit more rounded, like hills and valleys. So again, you can kind of see as it's going across, it's a little softer. Hills and valleys are just reverses of each other and how you want that to look. And you could do arches, so maybe I just want an arch that goes across the top, or maybe I want an arch that just goes across the bottom, so you can do that. You can also invert it, so maybe I want to flip the way that it looks right now, right? I can do that. I can also actually fiddle with where I want those, like how many of those ripples that I want, just by kind of clicking the numbers here, and they go in half units, right? So all of that gives you kind of an idea of what you can do with the tools. No. All right, so we already kind of talked about this. So again, you can literally count all of your squares and how many. Like I said, mine actually goes to 10, but since I'm only focusing on the first half, I did 5 here. You can actually see what your actual block sizing is or put in your block sizing. Okay, let me clear that out, and let's actually figure out what I want to do with this quilt. Well, the first thing that I'm going to do is, there was a pattern that I created on QuiltCAD that I liked for this quilt. So I'm going to go into my patterns and I'm going to find it. It's what I called Ferris Wheel 2. And I have these blocks highlighted, so I'm going to place that pattern, and right now it's centered. And I really want it to come very close to touching each of the sides. So if I want it to actually touch, I'm going to max it out, which I did here. But I can also adjust in tiny steps if I want it to be just barely not touching, which is my preference, so that I don't go into the other rows. And so I've just moved it a little bit so it'll just have that space right around those. Okay. So now I have to kind of decide what I want to do in my small blocks. And I have all kinds of different small blocks, and I don't want to be too busy. So maybe I just want to do a simple meander. So I'm going to go again to select pattern, and I'm going to look at the different blocks shapes that we have. And if I want to do like a stippling kind of meander, I can click on that and hit open. And let's say I want to do this throughout, the top part of the quilt here. And I'm doing kind of specific, since I don't want these blocks to get highlighted because they're overlapping in two. So I click the specific ones, and then since this row is empty, I just did the whole row. And I'm going to place the pattern. When it places the pattern, I could do these as individual stipples if I wanted, but usually if I want to kind of create more of a uniformed look, then I want this to connect. So if I max these both directions here, I'm going to get that stippled look across that. And so now as I look at that, I'm not really sure that's what I want. I don't know that. It almost feels a little too busy to me, and I don't feel like it's going to highlight and emphasize all the different blocks that I have. So I don't think I like that at all, and so I'm just going to clear that out. Right? So that's, again, what this button here does. So let's look at a couple of other patterns. Let's see. I'm going to look at the block ones this time instead. because I just, for some reason, I really like to kind of emphasize individual blocks. And I decided I wanted to kind of do a couple of these. And initially I was like, okay, well, I have a couple different blocks here in the front row, so maybe I'll do this fill 1 here where my Lemoyne stars are. So I have a Lemoyne here, 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 and here. So I'll go ahead and place that pattern. And then I want to maybe do a different pattern in between that's similar but a little less, since what I'm now kind of emphasizing are going to be these blocks here where I've got more of that pinwheel design. Right, so I'm going to go back to select pattern, and I decided that fill 2 was similar but different enough that it would connect nicely. Open that, and I will place that. But I'd really like them to touch, so we'll go ahead and do the max thing. By highlighting everything and kind of take a look at that. But then what I noticed is with me bunching these two up, I get a really complex pattern here, and I kind of don't like that it doesn't continue everywhere, but I do like how I get a little bit of complexity and then it simples out. So I think I'm going to rechange this one to be more like this, and I'm not going to worry about it so much being a particular block type, but the location of the block. I decided I think that was a little bit more fun and the feel I wanted for that quilt, and then I can continue that design all the way through. So I'll place that pattern, and again, max that out, right? And I think I want to alternate that on all of the rows. So instead of going back to grab like the old one, I can use that copy feature. But since I have this one already in here, I'll go ahead and highlight the opposite ones and place. All right, so we're going to grab the one and highlight the one we want to copy, click our copy button, and then highlight the cells or the blocks where we want that to go. By hitting R paste. Okay, and so I still have this one in here, but as you see, if I do the copy and paste, it takes it exactly the way I have it on one of the previous blocks, including its expansion. So that is what's a little bit different than if I go back and I replace this one. All right, so I'm just going to stop there. And now I think I'm pretty pleased with what my quilt's going to look like as I do my automation. So I am ready to place this. Now you can save directly from here, which I'm just going to write over this one, and you can see it's called QLT because this is your QuiltCAD file that you've created. And since this exists, I'm going to say, yes, I want to override it, or I would give it a different name. All right, now I'm ready to sew. I could sew in zones if I have a smaller one, but since I'm really going to treat this as a place as I go pattern, I can just do place as a single pattern. I have already stitched row 1 and 2. And I've already stitched this one as just kind of a practice to see what I wanted it to look like. So I am only going to highlight those specific areas of my plan here that I want to quilt this time. So I've highlighted those 4, and I'm going to click place as a single pattern. And now I'm ready to go. If I hadn't saved, when I clicked on that, it would prompt me to save. Sometimes I just prefer to save in advance if I'm worried that, you know, my tablet's going to crash. because, you know, sometimes computers do that, they crash, and I don't want to have to redo all my work, or I've been playing with it for a while, or I was doing it off the frame, that kind of thing, or sometimes I'll just hit the button and let it prompt me. So there's no right or wrong way, it's whatever you're comfortable with. Pattern placement, we have a previous video on that, so I'm just going to kind of briefly go over it with you. We're going to start, I am going to do a 4-point placement, so I'm going to line up this first corner where my needle is, and I'm going to hit the top left node, the little that turned now green. Right, so that is placed. The gray ones are not placed yet. I can drop down to the placement of this next one. Click on it, it turns green. Green means go. And move over to the other side. So I'll do the top of the other side. Get it about where I want it. Slide this down. And we're ready. You can see that my quilt top isn't perfectly straight on here. That is what's great about pattern placement. It really allows you to show the machine and the automation exactly where things need to be. All right, so I have it on fit, that's what I want. Again, our first video that talks about pattern placement goes over some of those features, so I'm not really going to worry about that here. I'm just going to move on to quilt. All right, so before I get into the actual quilting, now that I'm in this screen, I am going to check my settings, and I have it on medium. I have selected how I want it to do the tie off, so it's going to do micro stitching, and I can indicate how many I want, up to 4. I could change it to a back and forth stitch. I don't really love that one for this particular set of patterns, since that's all going to be in the center anyway. And in fact, since it is in the center, I'm probably going to drop it down to 3 because I'm already going to have a lot of thread there. You can have it pause on trim lines, because if we take a look at this under optimized, you're going to see, because of the placement of the different patterns that I did here and how the machine's going to stitch it, even if I change my numbering or if I try from right to left, I'm going to have trim lines. So there's really nothing on this one that I can optimize, so I'm going to leave it as is. And so you can actually now see that on here where those trim lines are going to be. So kind of going back to those settings, I can have it pause with the trim lines if I want. I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just going to reach in and cut as I go and fix my back once I finished everything off. Stitches per minute, I've set it at 11. 10 was a little too big for me, 12 was a little too small for the designs that I picked, so I'm kind of going in between with an 11. So I like those settings, and now I'm ready to sew. So I'm going to start with clicking pull up bobbin, and I had it set to automatically pull up the bobbin, which means it is going to move the machine to the start point for me. It's going to drop the needle. I lost my tail, so we're going to redo that. And give myself a tail I can hold on to. So if I mess up like that, I can hit redo. And so it's going to go back to that spot. It's going to drop the needle. The machine's going to move. And as it moves, I can gently pull on that, and it's going to wait for me. To get a hold of my bobbin, which for some reason I can't do today. All right. So again, if you do need to redo it, just hit the redo button. The needle's going to drop, and then the machine's going to move for me. You can do this manually. I really don't mind it doing it for me. Just kind of keeps me in the focus. Lets me think for a minute. Got a little bit of a knot there, so I'm just going to trim that. And I'm going to hold both my top thread and my bobbin thread. And now that I've got both, I'm going to hit sew. And that's going to move back to that starting position of where it wants to do the sewing. And it's going to start to sew. And as it does that, I'm just slightly gently pulling to keep that in place as it does those tie-off stitches. And it's going to start. And so now we're just stitching out the design that we developed on our QuiltCAD. So you can see my blocks aren't perfectly aligned, so I could, if I wanted to, instead of doing this as a full pattern, I could literally do one block at a time as well. Doesn't really bother me because there's going to be so much overlap in the different ones. I think it's going to give it kind of a fun look. But that's where, you know, playing with the different features of pattern placement, measuring your blocks and all of that is beneficial depending on what it is you want. So as you can see, it kind of stopped. It gives me this long tail, and I'm going to trim that, and it's going to do the tie off again and move on to the next one. So we're going to finish this row up, and then when we come back from this, I'll go ahead and move my quilt top, and I'll show you, just so you can see that when you do develop patterns in QuiltCAD, how they will behave on your quilt, anything that you need to do to kind of like fix them so that they're ready to go. So we'll do that. We're just going to let this finish up. All right, so then the last thing I want to show you is what it's like to stitch from QuiltCAD. I'd already kind of showed you how to use it and everything, but I just want to kind of go through, let's say we've finished a pattern in here. So I'm going to start by just selecting a pattern that I've already created, which is this Ferris wheel. And so this is what it's going to look like. And I am going to just fiddle with it a little bit. And so I just have this weird one here. And I can go to optimize, and I can see that that is going to create me some issues. So that kind of lets me know I don't like that. So I can go back. And I can zoom in. I'm going to turn my nodes back on because I need this and this node to snap together. And that should fix that problem. And so now my starting and stopping point's in the same place. That's why I only have one. And so this looks pretty optimized. I can take a quick look at this animation of the stitching just to kind of see. And I'm happy with that, so I can hit OK. And so from this screen, I showed you could go into Quilt. So I'm going to click that, and it's going to prompt me to save because I made some changes. And just to make sure I didn't mess up my design, I'm going to rename it. So just like when I was in the QuiltCAD, if I'm in PatternCAD and I've designed a pattern and I'm ready to quilt it, it takes me to pattern placement. And again, I'm going to do that 4-point placement. So remember, when the node is green, it is set. All right, so that looks pretty good. You can see I have it in fit. Let's see, I could try stretch, but fit's gonna just kind of keep it within those borders. If I want to adjust a little bit, I do have those options. All right, so happy with that placement, happy with the size and how it's going to go on this block, and then everything's exactly the same as before. So I'm just going to step down so I can see when I do the dropping of everything once I hit that quilt. All my settings are going to be the same as how I set them before because I haven't changed anything, so I'm not going to review that again, but I'm going to go through that pull-up bobbin. It's going to move the machine to the location. So as you can see, once you've kind of learned one skill, there are some places where that skill is going to repeat for you. So it's going to get real comfortable going through all these processes. And I just really wanted to show you how it's very similar. Remember to gently pull up the bobbin because it's moving. You want to get rid of that looseness, otherwise you'll get a little loop in the back that you'll have to deal with. Now she's going to stitch for us. Well, we're done quilting our pattern, and I really hope that this video has inspired you and helped you decide what version of QCT6 that you need. I really like the Pro version because it allows me to be a little bit more creative and come up with my own designs. If you have QCT Pro at home and you want to know a little bit more about some of the features I showcased today, if you go into your user manuals here, you will see a list of PDFs that give you some more information with detailed images and pictures and so on of QuiltCAD and pattern placement, some of those things that I mentioned as well. In future episodes, we are going to go into more details in some of these Plus and Pro features that we overviewed in the last couple of videos. And we're really going to get into the nitty-gritty of different things that you can do, from how to use QCT6, various features and tiers on different types of frames. Today I used the 21X Elite, but we'll do it on the 16X, we'll do it on the 19Xs, we'll do them on hoop frames, we'll play with the little Rebel, and we'll just really kind of build up your skills and help support you in your journey with automation. If you have any questions that you can't get answered to already in the manuals that I showed you, you're always welcome to contact our tech support team at support@graceframe.com. And if you liked this video, we would love it if you would click and subscribe. Until next time, I hope that you sew with love and grace. Thanks for joining me.